Okay, so applications of simple interest, and so that's what you're looking for in these type of problems. You use the simple interest rate formula if it says simple interest rate. Only use it if it says it. Now, all of these will be, because this is the only thing we've talked about this far. So remember, you have to use the formulas for any problem using simple interest. These are the two formulas, all right, that we'll be using today. Right, the first example, suppose you invest $3,000 for 4 years at an annual simple interest rate, so there's that phrase of 6%. How much interest is earned? So we use the interest formula. INT equals the present values times R, I did T first, times R times T, and then you just plug everything in. Well, the 3,000 is the present value. You plug in the R, but remember, you plug that in as a decimal, and time is in years, which that's what they gave you, so times 4. So it's 3,000, and then you just make sure you're careful typing that out in your calculator. And so 3,000 times 0.06, so that would be how much interest you get every year, and you get that 4 times because you're doing it for 4 years. And so it simplifies to $7,200 in interest. Right, so that's how much interest you earn. Right, find the total amount of money you'll have at the end of the 4 years. So this would technically be future value. Now, you could plug it in the future value formula, and if you want to just play around with the future value for you can. But in this case, you don't have to. It's kind of one of those work smarter, not harder examples. Future value is just the present value plus the interest, right? Our present value was the original amount the original amount of the investment, which was our 3,000, plus the interest we earned over our 4 years, which was 720. And so the grand total future value was the $3,720, the original amount we put in, plus the $720 we earned. All right, so that was the total future. And again, if you did plug it in that future value formula, you should get the same answer. If you plugged in your interest rate times your present value, you should get the same thing. But you don't need to. Future value is the present value times interest in this case. All right, next example is a loan example. Suppose Jack borrowed $300 from a loan shark. 6 months later, so there's a given in time a month, so I got to keep that in mind. Mr. Linder, Jack must pay back the loan for a value of $3,500. What is the annual so there's the annual and that's actually what we're looking for. We want to find R, right? What's the annual simple interest rate? All right, so we're looking for R. R is our unknown. All right, we were given the present value is 3,000. So I'm going to kind of write out here again, kind of talk you through the easiest way to get to the answer. They gave us time in months. Remember, time always has to be in years. So 6 months is half of a year, right? There are 12 months in a year. And so the way you do that, you usually divide by 12. Take 6, divide by 12, and it comes out 1/2 or 0.5. And you can use the fraction or the decimal, it doesn't matter. 6 months is half of the year. We want to find the interest rate. Now, I can figure out what interest is. If I take my future value minus my present value, I have interest. So if I take my 3,500, subtract away my 3,000, the extra is the 500. And the interest formula is the simpler case. So whenever I can figure out what interest is, I always do that because the interest equation is the simpler one to solve. The INT only has a few moving parts. It's the simpler equation. It's the present value times my interest rate times time. And so that's what I'm going to use. $500 was the interest. That's the extra amount he had to pay back. Present value was 3,000. Interest rate's what we're looking for. Time I had to convert to years, so I plug in the years. All right. Annual, yearly simple interest rate, therefore time has to be in years. And then I simplify. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply my 1/2 times my 3,000 to get 1,500 times my R, divide by my 1,500. And so that's 1/3. So my interest rate, if I write it as a decimal, is 0.3333 repeating. If I write it as a percent, which often we have it as percents, it's 33 1/3%, right? 0.33333 repeating is 1/3. Move my decimal place over 2 times, I get 33 and then 1/3. Right, so the interest rate would be 33 1/3 if it was given. So it just depends. If they asked it for it as a decimal, give it as a decimal. If they asked it for as a percent, give it as a percent. All right, next example. An investment over a period of 2.5 years paid, so they gave us the interest, $337.50 in interest. The annual simple interest rate, so there again, there's my phrase, the yearly simple interest rate was 7.5%. How much money was originally invested, right? They didn't tell me what the present value was. What they told me was my interest. The interest was $337.50. They told me the years, 2.5 years, so 2.5 was the years. My interest rate was 7.5%, so as a decimal, that's 0.075. And so I want to find the present value. So I use my interest formula, because that's what I have. So this is the formula I have to use. And I'm solving for the present value. My interest was that $337.50. Present value is what I'm looking for. My interest rate was 0.075 and time was 2.5 years. Biggest thing about these problems, especially because we're plugging them into a computer program, right? You do not round until the end of the problem. So when we multiply that out, do not round. Leave it exactly 0.1875. Do not round until the end of the problem. Otherwise, you could be significantly off, and so your answer would be off by what they consider a significant amount, and it'll be marked wrong in the computer. Alright, so no rounding till the end of the problem. So divide by the exact value, 0.1875, so you take your $337.50, divide by the 0.1875. If you do that, you'll get the present value is exactly $1,800. And that's the answer that would be accepted. Right, the second part, so that's part A. The second part, find the value of the investment after 2.5 years. So this is asking you, well, how much do you have in 2.5 years? So this is asking for future value. Now, you could use the future value formula, but you don't have to. And so don't do that. Future value is your present value plus your interest. I now know my present value, and I was told my interest. So present value was $1,800, interest was $337.50. Figure out how much money I have at the end of the 2.5 years. I add those together, and so it's the dollar amount, $2,137.50 in change. All right, so again, biggest thing, do not round until the end. Alright, no rounding until you finish the problem. Until it's the very end of the problem. And actually this one we didn't have to round at all, because it came out exactly $1,800, and then the same thing, it gave us exactly 50 cents. Right, next example, how long? So kind of doing all the different types that you can be asked. I can ask you for the future value. I can ask you for the interest. I can ask you for the interest rate. I can ask you for the present value. Now I'm asking you for time, the t value. Alright, so how long will it take your investment of $2,000 to grow to $2,180 if the investment earns 12%? So there's my simple interest per year. This time they did it instead of annual simple interest, they did simple interest per year, but it means the same thing. Annual means yearly. Alright, so they gave us the interest rate, which is 12%. That's 0.12. They gave us the present value. The original amount was $2,000. Future value was $1,080. $2,180. And so I'm going to figure out my interest from that. Right? If I invested $2,000, I now have $2,180. My interest was $180, right? And I want to find time. So again, I can use the interest formula, the simple interest formula. Present value times my interest rate times time. And this time I'm looking for time. Right, my interest was $180. That's how much extra I have. Present value was $2,000. My interest rate was fairly high. 12% is a pretty high interest rate. And then I solve for time. Right, so again, no rounding until the end of the problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my 12%, multiply by my 2,000, and so that comes out a nice number, so I don't have to worry about rounding. 140 times time, and then divide by your 240. And so time comes out 0.75. Alright, so time is 0.75 of a year. Oftentimes, the WebAssign and even the test, and even the final exam, if it comes out a decimal, like this, where it's a fraction of a year, they'll ask for the answer in months. Right? Because you don't usually tell somebody, well, it'll take 0.75 of a year. Right? Or 3/4 of a year. Right? Well, what is 3/4 of a year? Right? Usually we'll talk about that in months. How many months is that? And so what you do is to figure out months, you take the 0.75, there are 12 months in a year, excuse me, and that comes out 9. Alright, so 3/4 of a year is 9 months, and usually that's how they'll ask it for you. So they'll say, if it comes out something like this, a 0.75, something that's a decimal fraction of a year, because that's how we talk about it. If you were talking to a friend and you would give them an answer, your answer wouldn't be 0.75 of a year. No, your answer would be 9 months into the year is when I earned $180. By that time, 9 months into my year. And so we will almost always ask you to convert both the book will, the WebAssign will, the test will, and if this is a question on a final exam, it will as well. So make sure you know how to convert between years and months. All right, next example also has things in terms of months. All right, Lloyd invested some money at 7 3/4% annual simple interest. So there's my simple interest. At the end of 16 months, the investment totaled an amount of $3,475.50. How much money did he originally invest? All right, so first of all, there's the 7 3/4. So 3/4 is 0.75%, which if I write that as a decimal, it's 0.0775. And so, again, sometimes students struggle with these. Remember, the fraction I can write as a decimal, so 3/4 is written as the decimal 7.5, because it's a decimal. And then that's the percent, and if I convert the percent then to the pure decimal form, it's 0.775. And so there's my R, so that's step 1. Alright, step 2, time they gave me 16 months, but I can't use months because, remember, it's in years, right? My interest rate is annual, so time has to be annual as well. And so I have to convert 16 months to years, and so you do that by dividing by 12. You take your 16, divide by 12, and technically you could leave 16/12 and plug it into your function, that's fine. But don't round it. Either plug it in exactly 16/12, or if you prefer the simplified fraction, which is what I'll use, it's 4/3 of a year. Alright, so it's a year and a third is what it is, right? 4/3 is 1 year plus a third. Alright, so there's my interest rate as a decimal. There's my time in years. The other value that they gave me was what it totaled after 16 months. And so they gave me the future value, $3,475.50. And so this is an example of, well, there's no way to figure out the interest. I can't. I want to find the present value. And so in this case, I can't use the easier formula. I have to use the future value formula. All right, so I can't use the interest formula because there's no way to figure out interest. If there's no way to figure out interest, the formula I have to use, well, I have to use that. Future value equals present value times 1 plus my interest rate times time, all in parentheses, and it's important that you do put parentheses around it. Looking for the PV, present value. Alright, so my future value is $3,475.50. PV is what I'm looking for. In parentheses, I have 1 plus my interest rate, which was 0.0775, times my time, which was 4/3. Alright, the biggest thing about this one is that side within the parentheses is really, really, really messy. Alright, and you do not want to round until the end of the problem. And so there's 2 ways to do this. You can just divide that thing as it is. and type it in your calculator like this. Alright, and I'm going to go to my calculator to kind of show you, to figure out how much was my present value, so I get it exactly. Alright, so there's no rounding, so there's no error, so when I type it in, I get it right. Because the computer's going to look for the fact that you didn't round. That's part of the problem. Alright, so there's two ways to do this. Either you could plug it in all in one go, and if you do that, you do have to be careful when you plug it in all in one go. You have to take your future value, which was $3,475.50, divided by parentheses 1 plus that decimal point 0.775 times the fraction, and the rule of thumb is always put parentheses around the fraction. Alright, and hit enter, and you get your answer. Alright, that's one way. So the answer is 3,150. Another way is what you could do is you could simplify in the parentheses first. So you could take the 1 plus that decimal point 0.077 times the fraction of time 4/3. Alright, and so that would be alright, that's a messy number. And you can convert that to a fraction and then move it to the other side. Or your calculator allows you, that's exactly what that side is, right? It's a messy number. And so what I could do is I could take my future value, which was 3,475.5, hit divide by the previous number, and it will divide by the previous number exactly. And how you do that is you hit second the negative. That shows me the answer. So that means I want the previous answer. And so if you hit second, that negative number, it'll divide by my previous answer. So it'll take that 3,475.5, divide it by exactly that 1.033333 continuing. All right, and it'll give me the same answer, 3,150. All right, so my answer is 3,150 exactly. All right, so biggest thing is do not round until the problem is over. All right, so a lot of times there is no rounding if you do it right. Alright, so that's the biggest thing with these, is make sure you're careful how to type them in the calculator. Alright, so there's a couple examples to try them on their own. This one you should be able to use the interest formula. Alright, this one you'll use the future value formula. I did one of each example where you had to use the future value and where you could use the interest one. Alright, and so try those on your own, and that's 2.1, which is it? 2.1 is not too bad. You do have to use the formulas, and the formulas you get to have. The biggest thing is just getting careful with make sure your units, time are exact, and make sure you don't round until the end of the problem. Those are sort of the two things that you have to pay attention to. Alright, we'll stop there.